You are dying. Not in the physical sense, at least, not yet, but you are watching the most potent version of yourself bleed out in the shadows of tomorrow. Every time you set an alarm and hit snooze, a piece of your soul withers. Every time you promise yourself that Monday is the day you finally start that business, fix your body, or master your mind, and then allow that Monday to dissolve into a haze of cheap dopamine and scrolling, you are committing a slow, silent suicide of potential. This is the unseen cost of your inconsistency. It isn't just a missed workout or a late project, it is the systematic destruction of your self-trust. When you cannot keep a promise to the man in the mirror, you lose the right to lead, the right to respect, and the right to a legacy. You are becoming a ghost in your own life, a spectator watching others achieve the greatness you feel entitled to but refuse to earn. The world doesn't care about your good intentions. The universe does not reward the man who almost started. It rewards the man who is dangerous. And the most dangerous man in any room is not the strongest or the loudest, it is the man who is relentlessly consistent. It is the man who has replaced the flickering flame of motivation with the cold, immovable steel of identity. Most of you are living in a cycle of heroic starts and pathetic finishes. You are addicted to the rush of a new beginning, but you are allergic to the mundane grind of the middle. You are waiting for a feeling to strike you before you act. But feelings are for children. Men of character act because it is their duty, regardless of the chemical weather inside their brains. Today, the cycle ends. I am not going to give you a productivity hack or a top 5 tips list. Those are band-aids on a bullet wound. Instead, I am going to introduce you to an unconventional system that merges the lethal precision of Japanese samurai philosophy with the grit of modern stoicism. We are going to explore the concept of Heiho, strategy as a way of life, and the Kaizen principle of microscopic evolution. This is a blueprint for an absolute identity overhaul. We are going to look at the neuroscience of why your brain is currently wired to fail you and how to re-engineer your basal ganglia to make discipline your default setting. Before we dive into the dark reality of what this journey requires, I need you to make a choice. If you are looking for comfort, turn this video off. If you want to be told that it's okay to be average, go elsewhere. But if you are ready to kill the old, weak version of yourself to let the warrior emerge, then stay. Subscribe to this channel right now, because we are building a brotherhood of the unshakable. Comment "I am the path" below to signal your intent. The clock is ticking, and time is passing anyway. Let us begin. Meet Elias. Elias is not a failure by the world's standard, but he is a failure by his own. At 32, he works a mid-level corporate job that provides a comfortable paycheck, a decent apartment, and a slow, agonizing death of the spirit. Every morning, the ritual of defeat begins before he even opens his eyes. The alarm blares at 6 a.m., the time he promised himself he would wake up to finally work on that side architectural project he's dreamt of for years. But his hand moves with the muscle memory of a ghost, striking the snooze button. 1 strike. 2 strikes. By 7:30 a.m., he crawls out of bed, his first act of the day being a broken promise to himself. He feels the familiar, dull ache of self-loathing, but he numbs it immediately. He reaches for his phone, drowning his consciousness in the fluorescent glow of social media, comparing his behind-the-scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. His day is a series of almosts. He almost speaks up in the meeting with a brilliant idea, but his lack of preparation breeds a lack of confidence. He almost goes to the gym on his lunch break, but a minor stressor at his desk becomes an excuse to seek comfort in a heavy, processed meal. He returns home exhausted, not from hard work, but from the sheer weight of carrying a version of himself that he hates. The evenings are the worst. He sits on his couch, the architectural sketches gathering dust in the corner, and tells himself, "Tomorrow. Tomorrow I will have the energy. Tomorrow I will be the man I know I can be." But deep down, Elias knows that tomorrow is a liar. Tomorrow is where dreams go to rot. The breaking point didn't come in the form of a grand tragedy, it came in the form of a reflection. It was a Tuesday evening, raining, a cold, indifferent drizzle that mirrored his internal state. Elias was standing in front of his bathroom mirror after a particularly long bout of mindless scrolling. He looked at his eyes and realized he didn't recognize the man looking back. The fire was gone. His posture was slumped, the physical manifestation of a decade of giving in. In that moment, his younger brother called him. His brother, who used to look up to Elias as a titan, was calling to share his own recent successes. As Elias forced a fake smile into the phone, offering hollow congratulations, he caught his reflection again. He realized that he had become the warning story in his family. He was the guy who had potential but never did anything with it. The humiliation was visceral. It felt like a physical weight on his chest, a tightening in his throat. He hung up the phone and looked at the half-empty bag of chips on the counter and the glowing TV screen. He realized that if he died tonight, the story of Elias would be a footnote of wasted talent and unkept promises. He wasn't living, he was just waiting to die. The pain of remaining the same finally became greater than the fear of change. He realized he didn't have a time management problem or a resource problem, he had a soul problem. He was a man without a core. He spent that night sitting in the dark, the silence of the apartment deafening, realizing that the breaking point isn't when things fall apart, it's when you finally realize they never even started. He was ready to find a way out, even if he had to bleed for it. Driven by a desperate, quiet fury, Elias sought out the only man he knew who seemed to possess a peace that wasn't passive, an old acquaintance of his father named Kenji. Kenji was a master of traditional Japanese carpentry, a man who lived in a small, meticulously organized house on the edge of the city. He didn't advertise himself as a coach or a guru. He simply existed with a level of intentionality that made the air around him feel heavier, more stable. When Elias arrived, disheveled and smelling of the previous night's defeat, Kenji didn't offer him tea or sympathy. He was out in his shed, hand-planing a piece of cedar. The sound was rhythmic, a steady shhh, as paper-thin ribbons of wood curled into the air. Elias began to pour out his heart, talking about his lack of willpower, his addiction to distractions, and his desire for a massive life overhaul. He wanted a grueling regime. He wanted to be told to wake up at 4 a.m. and run 10 miles. He wanted the warrior's path. Kenji stopped his work and looked at Elias with eyes that seemed to see right through the bravado of his desperation. "You speak of mountains," Kenji said, his voice like gravel and silk. "But you cannot even walk across a room without tripping over your own shadow." Elias started to protest, but Kenji held up a calloused hand. "You think willpower is a lightning bolt that strikes the worthy. It is not. Willpower is a muscle that you have allowed to atrophy into nothingness. You want to change your life? Most men want to change their lives because they hate themselves. But you cannot build a temple on a foundation of self-hatred. You must first prove that you are a man who can be trusted." Elias waited for the secret. He expected a complex philosophical treatise or a demanding physical challenge. Instead, Kenji reached into a bowl and pulled out a single, small black stone. He placed it on a wooden stool near the door. "This is your task," Kenji said. "For the next 7 days, you will wake up, and before you touch your phone, before you drink water, before you even use the restroom, you will move this stone from this stool to the windowsill. And every evening, before you sleep, you will move it back. That is all." Elias felt a surge of irritation. "That's it? That's a joke. I'm facing the collapse of my potential, and you're giving me a rock? I need discipline. I need the samurai way." Kenji leaned in, his presence suddenly suffocatingly intense. The samurai way is not found in the grand battle. It is found in the way the warrior ties his sandals. If you cannot move a stone when you are tired, or bored, or busy, then you have no right to speak of discipline. This is not about the stone, Elias. It is about the promise. You have spent years lying to yourself. You are a professional liar. This microtask is the only way to silence the liar. It is the Kaizen principle, the art of 1% improvement. You do not need motivation to move a stone. You only need to be a man of your word. If you fail this, do not return. If you succeed, you will have earned the right to the first lesson. Elias looked at the stone. It felt insultingly light, yet as he picked it up, he realized it was the heaviest thing he had ever carried. It was the weight of his own integrity. The first 3 days were an exercise in absurdity. Elias felt foolish. As he moved the small black stone from the stool to the window sill each morning, a cynical voice in his head mocked him. "You're a 32-year-old man playing with pebbles while your life is in shambles," the voice whispered. But by day 4, the mockery began to subside, replaced by a strange, quiet clarity. For the first time in a decade, Elias was winning. It was a microscopic victory, yes, but it was a perfect one. He had set a boundary, and he had not allowed his whims, his fatigue, or his mood to cross it. He was beginning to understand the true meaning of Kaizen, the Japanese philosophy of continuous, incremental improvement. It wasn't about the magnitude of the act, it was about the rhythm of the soul. By day 7, the act of moving the stone had become a sacred threshold. It was the physical manifestation of a daily stance. When he returned to Kenji's workshop, he didn't come with the frantic energy of a man looking for a fix. He walked with a steadier gait. Kenji noticed. He didn't offer praise. Praise is for those who need external validation, but he nodded toward the workbench. "The stone has done its work," Kenji remarked. "You have begun to cultivate ikigai, a reason for being, starting at the most basic level of your biology. Most people think ikigai is a grand purpose found in the stars. It is not. It is found in the quality of your presence in the smallest moment." Kenji began to explain the deeper architecture of what Elias was experiencing. He introduced the concept of hara-hachi-bu, traditionally a dietary rule to eat until only 80% full, but applied here to energy and ambition. "The reason you failed before, Elias, is that you tried to give 200% on the first day and had nothing left for the second. You were a firework, bright, loud, and then dark. I am teaching you to be a coal. Steady, glowing, and impossible to extinguish." This was the early win. It wasn't a bank account increase or a promotion, it was the recalibration of his nervous system. Elias found that because he had conquered the stone, he had more authority over his other habits. If he could move the stone, he could choose to drink water instead of soda. If he could keep the promise of the stone, he could keep a promise to sit at his drafting table for just 10 minutes. The momentum was subtle but undeniable. He felt a burgeoning sense of shoshin, or beginner's mind. He stopped acting like he knew why he was failing and started observing his life like a scientist. He noticed that his procrastination was often just a fear of the unfinished state of things. But with the philosophy of the microtask, he realized that a completed small task is infinitely more powerful than a neglected grand vision. He was no longer a man chasing a ghost of a future self, he was a man inhabiting his current self with honor. The unseen cost he had learned about in the beginning was being paid back, cent by cent, stone by stone. He was beginning to feel dangerous, not because he was powerful yet, but because he was becoming predictable to himself. He was finally a man who did what he said he would do. Success is a deceptive teacher. For 3 weeks, Elias was a machine. He had moved beyond the stone to waking up at 5:30 a.m., working on his architectural designs, and eliminating the digital noise that once drowned his brain. He felt invincible. But life has a way of testing a man's foundation when he least expects it. It happened on a Wednesday, the hump of the week where the initial adrenaline of a new life starts to wear thin. Elias received a scathing email from his corporate boss regarding a project he had neglected during his transformation. Simultaneously, his car's transmission died, leaving him with a $3,000 repair bill he hadn't budgeted for. The stress hit him like a physical blow. That evening, the old Elias, the ghost he thought he had killed, returned with a vengeance. He didn't move the stone. He didn't sit at the drafting table. Instead, he ordered a pizza, opened a bottle of bourbon, and descended into a 12-hour binge of mindless entertainment. He woke up at noon the next day, surrounded by grease-stained boxes and the crushing weight of a discipline hangover. The shame was paralyzing. He felt like a fraud. He convinced himself that the last 3 weeks were a fluke and that he was, at his core, a broken vessel that could never hold water. He avoided Kenji for 3 days, spiraling back into the familiar comfort of his own failure. He was ready to quit, believing that one crack in the armor meant the entire suit was useless, when he finally dragged himself back to the workshop, expecting a lecture on his weakness. Kenji was painting a ceramic bowl that had been shattered and glued back together. The cracks were filled with bright, shimmering gold. Kenji didn't look up. "You fell," he stated simply. Elias nodded, his voice thick with self-disgust. "I ruined it. All that progress, gone. I'm back at square one." Kenji set the bowl down. "This is Wabi-Sabi," he said. "The Western mind is obsessed with a perfection that does not exist in nature. You think that if you stumble, the path is gone. But the path is made of stumbles. Wabi-Sabi is the art of finding beauty in imperfection and strength in the repair. These gold-filled cracks make this bowl stronger and more valuable than a new one that has never been tested." He looked at Elias's bloodshot eyes. "You are not back at square one. You are at square 20, with a crack that needs gold. You are learning the difference between a stumble and a fall. A stumble is part of the walk, a fall is only permanent if you refuse to get up." He then introduced the concept of gambaru, to persevere and stand firm. In Japan, we do not say good luck. We say gambat. It means do your best or hang in there. It is an active verb. It implies that the struggle is the point. You thought consistency was a straight line to the stars. It is not. Consistency is the act of returning to the stone the moment you realize you've forgotten it. The shame you feel is a form of ego. You are so offended that you aren't perfect that you've decided to be nothing at all. Kill your ego, Elias. Embrace your wabi-sabi. The gold is in the getting back up. Elias looked at the golden cracks in the bowl. He realized that his relapse wasn't a sign to quit, it was the first real piece of training he had actually faced. Anyone can be consistent when life is easy. Only the dangerous man is consistent when his world is falling apart. To understand why Elias, and why you, constantly battle the urge to relapse into old habits, we must step out of the dojo and into the laboratory. The struggle for consistency is not just a philosophical battle, it is a biological war occurring within the 3 pounds of tissue between your ears. Ancient warriors spoke of the internal demon, but modern science at institutions like Stanford and MIT identifies this demon as a conflict between the prefrontal cortex and the basal ganglia. Your prefrontal cortex is the samurai, the seat of logic, long-term planning, and your highest aspirations. Your basal ganglia is the peasant, a primitive structure designed for efficiency, seeking to conserve energy by turning repetitive behaviors into subconscious loops. When you start a new habit, you are operating entirely out of the prefrontal cortex. This is why it feels exhausting. You are manually overriding your programming. This is what Harvard researchers call decision fatigue. Every time you have to decide to be disciplined, you drain a finite reservoir of mental energy. By the time 5 p.m. rolls around, your reservoir is empty, and the peasant takes over, steering you toward the sofa and the sugar. The secret to dangerous consistency isn't having more willpower, it's the mechanical process of migrating behaviors from the prefrontal cortex into the basal ganglia. You aren't trying to force yourself to be consistent, you are trying to automate your identity. This is where the neuroscience of the identity shift occurs. A study from University College London famously debunked the 21-day myth, showing it actually takes an average of 66 days to form a hardwired habit. But more importantly, research into neuroplasticity shows that your brain is constantly pruning connections you don't use and strengthening those you do. Every time Elias moved that stone, he wasn't just moving a rock, he was firing a specific neural pathway. By repeating a microtask with zero exceptions, he was bypassing the decision fatigue of the prefrontal cortex and encoding a new identity loop in the basal ganglia. We must also look at the dopamine regulation system. Most people are dopamine junkies, living in a state of constant craving for the next spike, the next notification, the next bite of junk food. This keeps your nervous system in a state of high arousal and low focus. By practicing the Stoic principle of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, and the Japanese concept of mushin, no mind, you are effectively resetting your baseline. You are teaching your brain to find a steady, sustainable drip of dopamine in the process of work, rather than the reward of the finish line. You change your life by changing what your brain considers normal. If your identity is, I am a person who struggles to wake up, your basal ganglia will fight every alarm clock to protect that identity. But by using the Kaizen neurohack, starting so small that failure is impossible, you trick the amygdala, the brain's fear center, into staying quiet. You aren't changing your whole life, which the brain perceives as a threat, you are just moving a stone. Over time, the brain accepts this new data. You stop being a man who tries to be disciplined and start being a man who is disciplined. The warrior doesn't try to draw his sword, it is an integrated reflex of his nervous system. This is the science of the soul. 2 years have passed since Elias first stood in the cold rain outside Kenji's workshop. If you saw him now, you wouldn't recognize the slumped, hollowed-out man from the bathroom mirror. The transformation is not merely physical, though his frame is now lean and corded with the functional strength of a man who respects his vessel, it is atmospheric. He carries himself with the quiet, terrifying composure of a loaded weapon. He has successfully launched his architectural firm, but more importantly, he has built a life that is an extension of his soul. The dangerous consistency he once feared has become his natural habitat. He no longer reaches for discipline, he simply breathes it, but the most profound shift isn't found in his bank account or his professional accolades. It is found in the eyes of the people who depend on him. Elias's younger brother now calls him not to report success, but to seek counsel. His parents look at him with a mixture of pride and a touch of awe, sensing that their son has crossed the threshold into a territory few men ever inhabit. He has become a pillar, a man whose word is law within his own life. Because he mastered the stone, he mastered the room. Because he mastered the morning, he mastered the year. He has moved from the frantic pursuit of more to the stoic cultivation of enough. This is the legacy of the integrated man. Most people live fragmented lives. They are one person at work, another at the gym, and a third in the shadows of their private failures. Elias has achieved Heiho, the total integration of strategy and existence. There is no longer a work Elias and a private Elias. There is only the path. When a crisis hits his business, a delayed contract or a lost bid, he doesn't spiral into the bourbon-soaked paralysis of his past. He looks at the problem with Fudoshin, the unwavering mind, and asks, what is the next micro-task? He has killed his old self so thoroughly that the memory of his former weakness feels like a story about a stranger. He realizes now that true transformation isn't about adding things to your life. It's about a ruthless process of subtraction. He subtracted the need for external validation. He subtracted the addiction to comfort. He subtracted the lie that he was a victim of his circumstances. What remained was the core, the warrior. He has become dangerous because he cannot be bought with pleasure or broken by pain. He is a man who has decided who he is, and the universe has no choice but to align with that certainty. His architectural designs are now winning awards not because they are flashy, but because they possess the same Wabi-Sabi integrity he found in himself, a beauty born of function, endurance, and honesty. He has built a legacy that will outlast his physical presence, not through a single grand act, but through the cumulative weight of 10,000 small, honest moments. He has proven that the most radical thing a man can do in a world of distraction is to remain exactly where he said he would be. He is the master of his fate, the captain of his soul, and the living embodiment of the path that never ends. Now, we come to you. You have listened to the story of Elias, you have glimpsed the shadows of Musashi's cave, and you have peered into the biological clockwork of your own brain. But information without execution is merely a sophisticated form of procrastination. You can consume 1,000 videos, read 100 books on Stoicism, and memorize every Japanese term for discipline, but if you do not move the stone, you remain a ghost. The world is full of well-informed failures. Do not let yourself be another one. Dangerous consistency is not a secret reserved for the elite, it is a choice available to the desperate. It is the refusal to let your life be a series of almosts. Here is the philosophical framework for your transformation, the blueprint of the integrated man. The stance of Heiho: treat your life as a singular battlefield. There is no separation between how you brush your teeth and how you lead a company. The shield of Fudoshin: develop a mind that is moved by your will, not by your emotions. When the storm of stress hits, you do not seek shelter, you become the anchor. The strike of Ichinen: when you act with total presence. Give the task at hand 100% of your soul, or do not do it at all. I am now issuing you a 14-day dangerous consistency challenge. This is your stone. For the next 14 days, you will select one, and only one, microscopic task. It must be so small that it is impossible to fail. Perhaps it is doing 5 push-ups immediately upon waking. Perhaps it is writing 1 sentence of your book. Perhaps it is simply sitting in silence for 2 minutes before touching your phone. Whatever it is, you will do it every single day for 14 days. No excuses. No, I'll do double tomorrow. No, I was too busy. If you fail, you reset to day 1. This is not about the task, it is about rebuilding the bridge of trust between your mind and your actions. You are proving to your basal ganglia that you are a man who keeps his word. The clock is ticking. Time is the only resource that is truly non-renewable. You can earn back lost money, you can mend broken relationships, and you can rebuild a shattered business. But you can never, ever reclaim the minute that just passed while you were deciding whether or not to be great. Miyamoto Musashi spent his final days in a cave, not regretting his duels, but refining his spirit. He knew that the end comes for us all, and the only thing that matters when the light fades is the quality of the path we walked. Stand up. Fix your posture. Take a breath that reaches your gut. The old version of you ends the moment you decide it does. The path is right in front of you, overgrown with the weeds of your own excuses. Clear it. 1 stone at a time. Subscribe if you are ready to walk this path with us. Comment day 1 below to lock in your commitment. We are watching. The world is waiting. Never stray from the path.